how arguing online has feminized Western men. Now, obviously, I mean this to be provocative, but it is something I see as a serious issue, especially in a online environment where masculinity has become such a hot button issue. And I have said many times before, I don't find myself to be a particularly masculine guy. But nevertheless, I do think it is helpful if the larger part of male society maintains masculinity. You are going to run into a lot of problems that you do not foresee if you try to take this away. And I think number one, the thing you're going to end up is many unhappy women. However, the reason I see arguing online as so bad, I see it as like one of the most extremely feminine things a person can do, being completely led by emotion, overwhelmed by emotion, that you can't control it. Like, and maybe this is just a difference in perspective. I know I was raised by people who were older, so I tend to view the world in a older way. But I view everything on the internet as if I were talking in a room full of people I don't know. Would I say this? Would I be willing to stand on this? Well, if I'm not, then I won't type it and I won't send it. But when I see a guy 30, 40, sometimes older, arguing with like teenage girls and women in their young 20s, and like they're like, you stupid bitch, you don't know anything. And it's like, I picture like, what if guys were doing this in a room full of people, like at a McDonald's or something like that? Like dudes just screaming at women, and it's like I don't know what part of town you grew up in. Like maybe they do things different up there in the more posh sections, but like this is wholly unacceptable in my eyes. And oftentimes the guys that act like this and talk so ill of women simultaneously have the belief that men have to treat women differently because they are the more frail sex. Um, like, so you they disengage from their own views. Like you shouldn't be, well, she doesn't believe the same things I do, so I don't have to treat her that way. Because she doesn't accept your views, you sacrifice your own moral principles. I mean, that's really questionable in my eyes. But at the same time, you will see this with leftist podcasts where, they believe women should be treated as equals, and then will just talk over women as soon as they get an idea. You see this all the time, and it's something that pisses me off because in groups of people, I would make it a point, if someone, especially if I was talking to a girl and someone talks over her, I'm just going to ignore them. And with how often the girl will just give up, like I say girl and women interchangeably, so whatever. But it would shock me that the girl would just be fine with someone talking over her. And like that, I did this for obviously a real long time, but it would always shock me like how passive they were about it. And the guys on leftist podcasts don't even seem to notice. Like they're not even listening to the women. So it's the same thing where it's like you say these things because you think they sound good and you think they get you in with a group, but you don't mean them. You don't live them. You don't even care about them. They're just empty words. This is obviously something I don't like. People that say they believe in something and then don't follow those rules. I hold a very low view of this, and it's very common, especially online. However, I think this has all led to the feminizing of men because men treat women like men on the internet. And to me, this is a road to ruin because the internet does make them all treat everyone equally. They argue with women like they would argue with men. I obviously see this as wrong. But they do not. And this is what they live. This is what they do. Like when I watch shows and talk shows on YouTube and there's a woman on and the guy like takes down several of the woman's points. Like to him, he's going for high fives and stuff, and it's like, homie, you're arguing with a girl. Like, you know that, right? You know that's a girl you're arguing with. Like, uh, I don't know how else to interpret that. Like, I don't know how else to look at this and be like, Western men have been feminized because they see themselves as equals of women. Truly. Like, the proof is in the pudding. The way they behave is what matters. What they exemplify in their own lives is what matters, not the words they say. Anyone can say anything. What you do is what matters. And what Western men do, especially on the internet, is treat women like men. You know, I don't know how else to see this. To me, it leaves me aghast. And, you know, like I said, I've never been too masculine. I know by today's standards there's a lot of traits I have that are considered masculine that 20 years ago wouldn't necessarily be considered masculine. So, I don't know what to say much about that. I do think there is an issue with the West and masculinity, and I think it is exactly for the reasons that I am talking about that men are feminized and they are not willing to exemplify behaviors, and the behaviors they do exemplify have nothing to do with masculinity. In fact, they are arguing and emotional and they are feminine things. I take it for what it's worth.